The vice chairman of IBM, Gary Cohn, who also served as former President Trump's top economic advisor. Tax rates for most Americans could go up as soon as December of 2025.
Let me explain. So when we redid taxes in 2017, the personal side of the tax code expires December 31st of 2025. So as of January 1st, 2026, we revert back to the very complicated tax code that we had in 2017. So people have to remember that. It was extremely complicated. You bring in all these things as personal deductions, itemized deductions. Now you bring in SALT deductions. We raise tax rates. Right. We raise tax rates, but you bring in all the loopholes that we got rid of. So what we tried to do when we rewrote taxes is we tried to simplify it, and we tried to get rid of all the loopholes that basically the wealthy people in America use. And that was a way that we tried to make the tax code fairer. And the data shows that we've made the tax code fairer. If you actually look at who pays taxes in this country, the bottom 50% of earners in the United States pay 2.3% of tax collected.
What?
And the top 10% pays over 70% of tax collected in this country.
That sounds like the exact opposite of what President Biden described in the State of the Union.
A billionaire is a measure of net worth. It's not a description of their taxable income. Mm-hmm. You could be a billionaire and have no taxable income. You could not have $1 billion and have a high taxable income. So when you look at the way people are...
You're just sitting on assets.
You're just sitting on assets. And you could be sitting on illiquid assets. You could be sitting on liquid assets. We do a very good job in this country of taxing income. That's what the Constitution talks about. The Constitution talks about taxing your income. Mm-hmm. There is no income in this country unless you buy a tax-free bond that doesn't get taxed at a minimum of 20%, whether it's interest or dividends or capital gains. So there's no billionaire in this country that has income that is not paying at least 20%.
What do you make of that idea, though, and the explanation he's trying to make for why people are experiencing inflation, even though the rate is coming down?
Well, let's talk about inflation for a minute, because I think it's a really important concept for everyone to understand. Inflation has a compounding effect, meaning as you look at inflation year over year, you're adding up those numbers. You're not starting at a zero every year. Right. So if we had 6% inflation last year, 7% inflation, and now we have 4% inflation, that's 10% inflation. So if you take a basket of groceries at the beginning of 2020, just a simple basic basket that cost $100, it costs well over $125 today, because those 4% one year and 7% one year and 7% the next year, they add up. They're cumulative. So there's a huge cumulative effect inflation.
So when people are being told, consumers, you're wrong, inflation's heading, no, they're right.
They're completely
it is
right.
Actually
they're completely right. So
yeah.
People were losing purchasing power, and that's why people were angry. And then take on top of that the high interest rate environment. So people got very frustrated because the cost of their everyday lives got very expensive, and the cost of investing in their future by buying a home got nearly impossible.
If China or any other country makes us pay a tariff or tax, let's say 100 or 200%, we will make them pay a reciprocal tariff of 100 or 200% right back. It's called you screw us and we screw you, and everybody's happy.
So remember what a tariff is. A tariff is a tax that the importer pays at the border of the United States. That tariff then gets passed on to consumers here in the United States. It is a consumption tax. Mm-hmm. Now, look, I want to refine that a little bit. If we manufacture those products in the United States and we're using a tariff to protect our manufacturers because China can produce cheaper, because they don't pay fair wages, they don't have health care, they don't have to have a return on capital, I'm okay with the president or the president nominee or whoever it is putting a tariff on.
Business community will be with Trump.
I think the business community really wants to hear the policies. You know, there's a lot of big policies out here. We touched on taxes.
Yeah.
You know, what's going to happen in taxes by the end of 25? Where are we going to be? That's very important. Energy policy, very important to business. Business consumes a lot of energy. What's going to go on at the southern border? Legal immigration. We need skilled laborers in this country. We need to bring in 2 million skilled laborers in this country. Look, I can throw regulation on there, the ability to merge, the ability to consolidate, the ability to buy back stock. All of those things really have dramatic impact on the corporate community. The current administration is an administration that is standing in the way of business and business growing and business trying to grow jobs. Business wants to invest capital in this country. One of the other things we did in the 2017 tax plan is we made companies repatriate their offshore earnings. Companies want to reinvest that capital in the United States, but they want to make sure they can reinvest it in a sound way that will give their shareholders a return. When they invest the capital, it creates jobs, but they want to make sure the regulatory environment makes sense for them to invest capital.